Ah, yes. Bolivar. A country famous for its rich natural resources and orogenium deposits. Yet suffer from an ever-ending political conflicts. Once a colony of Iberia that managed to gain their independence, but eventually becoming a puppet state for Lithuania, went to war with Colombia, and the country is now divided into 3 different factions. But in the middle of those conflicts, there is one city, built upon neutrality from any conflict. In the Dossoles Holiday event, we follow the story of Chen and her vacation to Dossoles City. The story roughly happened after the event in Siesta, and Chapter 8, sometime after Chen resigned from her job in Lungmen. First, the story started in Lungmen. We see Lin Yuhsia and her father the Rat King discussing about an invitation letter from Miss Candela, a mayor in the city of Dossoles. Suddenly, Master Splinter got a phone call from Mizuki, the wife of Wei Yanwu. Apparently, both of them got an invitation letter from Candela. But since both men didn't want to go, Mizuki asked Yuhsia to go as their representative, which she agreed, and then pack her stuff for a long 15-day trip to Bolivar. Meanwhile, in the other part of Terra, Chen is in her room with Shirayuki in Siesta. Shirayuki gave her a letter from Mizuki about the invitation to Dossoles. Mizuki also wanted her niece to go to Dossoles as a special guest and take a day off from her work in Rhodes Island. But unknown to her, Chen was already on holiday in Siesta. But still, Chen accept her aunt's request and then go to Dossoles. After that, Chen arrived in Dossoles. But first, here's an insight about this city. Dossoles has become one of the nation's economic centers. It's a city of tourism, famous for its artificial sea and entertainment services. But on the other hand, the city was built upon neutrality from the civil war in Bolivar. All 3 different government factions have no power in Dossoles. And the city is infamous for allowing all sorts of crime, as long as it doesn't hurt the mayor's interest. Now back to Chen. After arriving, she was immediately brought to a cruise ship in the middle of the artificial sea, where she then met Yuhsia. Chen and Yuhsia is an acquaintance, but Chen rather not to mingle around her, knowing that she's the Rat King daughter and take part in the sewer accident. Both of the ladies then met Candela, and she welcomed them to Dossoles. She explained all sort of things about her city. And top of that, the annual Dossoles Warrior Championship. Twice a year the sea will be renewed, that's when the competition will be held. Which the winner will be given the privilege to press the button that starts the water changing process. And some other valuable rewards. Candela wanted Chen and Yuhsia to enjoy her city and joins the competition if they want. Or maybe, they can investigate about criminal activity in her city just for fun. Well, I don't see anything fun about that. But we'll need a crime plot in every Arknights vacation side story. Chen is confused that Candela doesn't care about the potential threat to her city. Which Candela confidently reply that nothing can threat the city of Dossoles. Candela then introduced them to Ernesto to act as a guide for both of the ladies. They then heads back to the city and decided to take Candela's request to investigate the criminal, while Chen was doing it as a sense of justice and righteousness. Yuhsia doing it because she's the representative for Wei Yanwu. Chen is going on her own to look around for clues, while Yuhsia and Ernesto was investigating in some underground bar. A fight broke out. Chen came to assist and pursue the bar owner to the place where the competition prelims are being held. Both Chen and Yuhsia then beat the owner and his men. But since Chen and Yuhsia unexpectedly enter the scrimmage prelims area, the audience mistakes them as one of the competitor in the prelims. And one thing led to another. Chen and Yuhsia entered the competition, while also investigating for the criminal, under their team's name, the Lungrat, which is basically a pun dedicated to our Rat King's daughter. On the other side of the venue, we see Hoshiguma and Swire, who are also on vacation. While Hoshiguma is laughing at Chen and Yuhsia team's name, Swire is more curious about the city. Chen and Yuhsia then met Pancho, Candella's subordinate and Ernesto's father. He congratulates both of the ladies for winning the prelims, and gave them their prizes. But don't let that old man smile fools you, he's an evil stubborn antagonist. After a short while, since the competition can be much more brutal than Chen anticipated, Chen asked Ernesto for a less harmful weapons. Because if Chen was to use her sword, the other competitor is as good as dead. Ernesto then take both of the ladies to his armory shop, and gave Chen a high-pressured water gun straight from Raytheon. According to him, this thing hits hard, but will only cause minor injury. Well, he certainly doesn't know he just created one of the best DPS unit in the game. Ernesto then explains about the details of Dossoles Warrior Championship. Basically there are prelims with various type of activity, which Chen and Yuhsia just won. And then the main competition. Round 1 of the competition is some sort of scavenger hunt. Round 2 is a triathlon race, the finish line is the mayor's cruise ship. And round 3, battle royale, last team standing and the cruise ship wins. 40 teams will enter the first round. And he explained that playing dirty is a fair game in this competition. Like sabotaging other competitor, or taking shortcuts in the race. Because in round 1 and 2, there is a voting for audience after each of the round. So basically the audience takes control of who will win, and who will lose. The next day, the day of the main competition, we see D.D. becomes the MC, and then introduce all of the participants. Among them are the Grey Feathers, led by Rafaela, Mizuki, a solo contestant, and of course the Lungrat, with Ernesto now joining them. After Candela signaling the start of the round 1, each of the competitors rush to the scavenger hunt area, where they must look for 20 scattered pure gold. Chen is with Ernesto, while Yuhsia left alone to investigate. And then she found a jackpot. She found that the Grey Feathers are planting bombs in the area, and most likely some other team are working with them. After seeing enough, she regrouped with Chen and Ernesto, who were helping another contestant, Mizuki, fighting bunch of other contestants. Surprisingly, some other team rush in and work together to take down Lungrat. But Chen with her water gun, and Yuhsia with her sand arts technique, managed to take them all down. Mizuki gave them his pure gold as a thanks. And then Lungrat won the first round. The next day, during the downtime before round 2, we got basically every info about who is behind all the crime that Candela was talking about. It was Pancho. He ordered Rafaela, Ernesto and his other underlings to plant bombs in the city and enter the competition for his master plan. Of course Chen and Yuhsia haven't know anything about this yet. Yuhsia takes Chen to a bar from before, which is now becoming her turf. She talks about Rafaela who planted the bomb, and her suspicion towards Ernesto. Chen wanted to tell Candela about this. But before that, Yuhsia mentioned that she shouldn't care much for people she barely know, and drop that fake sense of justice of her. Hitting Chen right in the feel, Chen raise her arm and throw a fist to Yuhsia's face, which she easily stopped with her palm. Meanwhile a bartender on the back is calculating the cost for the bar repairment. But then Chen and Yuhsia calmed down. And whether they like it or not, they still have the same goal. And then it's time for the round 2 of the competition, a triathlon. Contestant can interrupt each other and take shortcuts during the race. Meanwhile on the audience seats, we see Swire and Hoshiguma, still giving us some trivia about Bolivar. And also, we see some Rhodes Islander. They're working on some geology research, and acting as a liaison for Rhodes Island Dossoles cooperation. And well, giving us a sneak peek to Ija's new skin. Back to the competition. The second round has started, starting with the running phase. Chen and the other easily get to the second phase of cycling. The three of them decided to take a shortcut, but was blocked by Candela's subordinate. Ernesto stayed behind to deal with them. He then gave Chen a key to his warehouse, which have a passage that lead to third phase checkpoint. Chen and Yuhsia arrived to the warehouse, and were surprised by a booby trap set up by Ernesto. The rubble from the explosion blocked their way out. But Yuhsia just happened to pick up one of the bomb from Rafaela and use it to create another way out. Chen's bicycle got demolished, so she hopped on Yuhsia's backseat. Suddenly some other contestant is in hot pursuit to take them down, which kinda creates a scene like this.
時間には限りがあるんだ。そいつらを逃がすな。
After arriving in the swimming checkpoint, Chen rushed to the sea. While Yuhsia is preparing to use her sand arts technique, she can create some sort of temporary platform from sand that she uses as a springboard to reach the cruise ship. After jumping from one sand platform to another, she managed to get to the cruise ship first, without even swimming. After the second round, Lungroth and other contestants are in the cruise ship, along with some VIPs from the three government faction of Bolivar. But then, all hell break loose. Pancho announced about his true motive. He's sick of the political conflicts in Bolivar, and the three of the government factions are just the same, rotten to the core. But he also hates the city of Dossoles' neutrality and materialism. So he decided to wake the people of Dossoles about Bolivar's current state, and wanted to make the city into his own war base against the three factions, by using the VIPs in the cruise as a bargaining chip. The city is in full riot, with bomb explosion everywhere. But Candela remained calm, and thanks Pancho for making the round 3 of competition even more spectacular now. She also offers anyone who helps the city fight its invaders a generous rewards, which apparently almost anyone willing to do it. Meanwhile, in the cruise ship, finally knowing who's behind all of this, Chen and Yuhsia decided to free the hostages in the ship, and also take down Pancho and his men. Chen was drawing the attention of the guards in the ship, and then met Ernesto. Ernesto explained that Chen shouldn't take part in any of this, though he himself is rather hesitate whether to help his father or help Candela. But in the end he chose to help his father and fights Chen, and then Chen easily knocking him out cold. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ship, Yuhsia rescue the hostages and tell them to get away from the ship. She then encountered Rafaela, and eventually Yuhsia came victorious. Pancho then encountered Chen and Yuhsia. Both of them leap off from the ship. Pancho and his men gave a chase with their boats. But then Yuhsia blow up the cruise ship with her spare bombs. And then eventually everyone goes to the shore. Since Pancho's and his men were outnumbered and lost all of the hostages, they surrendered. Candela and Pancho's then had a little conversation, saying that Pancho's action is meaningless, and the irony that he hated the three factions, but accepting help from Lithuania. After that, Pancho's was taken to custody. Candela then announced the winner of the competition, Chen and Yuhsia, two complete outsiders that managed to solve the city's affairs. Chen then asked Candela if Pancho's action is a threat to the city, which Candela replied that those are barely a threat. The only threat to Dossoles is that if the city's people losing their desires, never to seek enjoyment again. In the aftermath, most of Pancho's men and children were pardoned, but will be exiled from the city. And Chen will eventually recommended Ernesto to Rhodes Island. Chen then met with her friends, who somehow came here too. Chen and Yuhsia settled their differences, and this Lung got herself some character development and a water gun. The Dossoles Holiday is clearly trying to introduce us with Bolivar's law, and what happened to Chen after chapter 8. So I guess we'll see more of Bolivar in the future. That should be all. Adios.